Welcome along to Tweet Street Scotland Occupied, home of the satirical saltire. I'm Cinnamon Bridges, aka Peter. With me this evening, as usual, it's my co-host, the best co-host ever. It's JB Whitesnake. How you doing, JB?
Not bad, Peter. Good to see you, pal.
Good. It's good to see you as well, mate. So we're here this evening. We've got a special guest and a fantastic guest, as far as I'm concerned. I've seen the documentaries. He's producer, writer. Yeah, there's so much to this man's bow that it's better coming for him, I think. It's Campbell Martin that we've got this evening. Hi, Campbell. How are you?
I'm fine. It's really good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Good. So the question on everybody's lips is, can I ask both of you, when was the last time you had anal or vaginal sex, please?
The answer to that would be stick it up your arse.
Exactly. Right, so you can see how absurd that is, folks.
Exactly.
I'm sorry for starting like that. However, it appears to be that's how we, and we're we're supposed to start nowadays in Scotland. No, right, we're taking the piss a wee bit. Welcome along to our Christmas party. As you can see, we're at Downing Street. We're not supposed to be doing that, but if it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander, so to speak. Right, so the reason we're here, Campbell Martin. Campbell, you have been, for me, a wee bit of an inspiration, to be honest. You've done documentaries that I've tuned into and taken a lot from. You've got a new book that's just out. Was it Something I Said? Is that the title for the book?
That's the title, yep.
Right. So without giving the full plot away, tell us a wee bit about your book, and then we'll go back in your history. We'll go back in time, but just tell us about your book at the minute, please.
Well, it's an autobiography, Peter. So it's my life story about growing up in Ardrossan, the working class family in Ardrossan, going to school, hating school, get into the big wide world of work, and obviously part of my work latterly was in politics. I worked for the SNP. I was in the Whip's office for 3 years, and then after that I was elected as a member of the Scottish Parliament. So it brings you up to date. The book brings you up to date, but obviously that period of my life and what happened during that period is something that a lot of people are interested in.
Well, I'm certainly interested, and it's something that it's on my Christmas list. I've not read it yet. I'll be honest with you. The wife it's one of the purchases that she's getting me for my Christmas. So I'm looking forward to actually getting in about it. I've seen a lot of quotes from it, and it's interesting me. And it's interesting me for the point of view, Campbell, that knowing the history of the documentaries that you did, you go in deep, I would say.
You've got to, I think, in everything I write and everything I make, every film I make, you've got to be able to prove absolutely everything you say. Otherwise, you get sued. So everything I say in the documentaries is true, and I can prove it. And everything I say in the book is true, and I can prove it. So some of the people who will not be happy about the things I say about them in the book, if I've got good lawyers, come ahead. They won't, because I can prove what I say.
And that's what makes it fascinating for me, Campbell. It's one of these really interesting stories. Having a kind of idea of the time that the book was written, or the period of which the book picks up from, and comes forward, and knowing some of the things and leaving some of the things to the imagination. I think the book for me is going to add those wee bits that I've got as ideas and just confirm other things that you can have through other people telling you similar things, and it's like, oh, well, there's too many people saying the same for it not to be true. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to getting in about it, if I'm honest. John, I'm going to pass. John, sorry, Cam, I'm going to pass it over to John to ask to see if there's anything that, because you shared a short clip with us, which I hope to add in with your permission at the end of this podcast, if that's okay with you, Campbell, just to run through at the end of the podcast. And I wanted to see, John, if there's anything that you've got from that and the documentaries that we're both kind of are aware of in your book, if there's anything that John wanted to kind of pick up on.
No, I just want your opinion on what the political situation now is in Scotland. How do you view it through your spectrum?
It's tragic, John. The book refers to a period, early 2000s, when the SNP completely lost its way. That was under the leadership of John Swinney. Swinney's the common denominator, of course. He's still there. But the SNP has completely lost its way, as far as I'm concerned. I mean, I'm not involved in politics anymore. I'm not a member of a political party. So looking in from the outside, I just cannot believe what the SNP has allowed itself to become, instead of the party that should be taking this country forward to independence. It's completely lost its way. Sadly, completely lost its way.
So you can't see any. Do you see Nicola Sturgeon having to basically? I think she can't survive by 2023. To be honest with you, she's boxed herself in and she's gave Boris Johnson the rope to hang her. Would you concur with that?
It's difficult for me, John, to criticise Nicola Sturgeon, because when I talk about Nicola, I'm not just talking about Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister, or the MSP. You know, she's somebody I knew well for many years. We were both SNP activists in North Ayrshire before either of us was elected anywhere. I know her mum and dad. You know, I know the family, and it's difficult for me to criticise Nicola, because I know her as a person, or I knew her as a person. I haven't spoken to her for a long, long time. Having said that, she's the leader of the party, you know, and she ultimately has to take responsibility for where the party has gone, and it's gone to a place that doesn't help the cause of independence. So, I mean, personally, I think that Nicola has surrounded herself with ultra gradualists, and she's been listening to them. And I mean, as I said, read the book. It tells you exactly what Swinney did when he was leader, and that's, for want of a better word, when I say leader, he's still there. You know, people like Angus Robertson are still there. Well, he's back. These are ultra gradualists. These are people who would be quite happy, as I say in the book, they'd be quite happy if independence fell in their laps, but they're not going to get out there and fight for it.
Yeah, I've noticed another one. Pete Wishart's very well, I don't see a lot on Twitter because he blocked me after I spoke to him, but he's very active on Twitter, basically criticising people who ask him, and I've seen a lot of people ask him a very honest and fair question, and he just doesn't want to know. He just basically berates them and says, sod off the Alba Party, like, you know. And for someone, and a guy allegedly that's speaking to him, asking him a fair question, and allegedly this guy went out and campaigned for him in Perth, knocking doors, helping him get elected, and basically telling him, because he asked him a question he didn't want to answer, basically telling him to sod off and go join the Alba Party. And the guy responded by saying, well, I'm not in any political party, SNP or Alba anymore, but if that's your attitude to somebody who knock doors to help you get elected, that says a lot about you. And it's really a damning indictment of some of these people who've got such important positions and are doing nothing to deliver independence and won't ever do. Now they've given it up. They're just careerists for their own ends now, as far as I'm concerned, some of them.
Well, you're absolutely right, Joe. I mean, some of the abuse on Twitter in particular is absolutely terrible, directed at fellow independent supporters. And coming from someone in Pete Wishart's position, it's just not acceptable. He should know better than that. And these are people who, we're all on the same side. We all want independence, supposedly, you know. But having served 20 years at Westminster, you have to question whether Pete's maybe quite happy where he is, you know, and quite happy with the situation that Scotland's currently in, because he's doing all right at it, you know.
That's right. Well, they're getting to the point where they're becoming what Labour were many years ago. They sent down their 50 plus Labour MPs and they all had a good time at it. We only heard from them when they wanted elected again, and nothing. And we had everything that happened to Scotland under Thatcher and everything else. Well, the feeble 50 down there were living the London good life and sucking the Westminster tit. And what did they do for Scotland? They sat back and watched it happen. And you're now getting, I've sad to say, increasingly more of the SNP living the London good life, living in the London bubble, and no delivering for independence. And that should be their first and foremost thought every day they get up and go into there is how can we get Scotland out of this shambles? But they seem to be sit back and watch the disaster unfold and be party to it. If they're not fighting to go to it, they're a part of it. And that's very deflating for people who want independence. I'm no member of any political party anymore, but I desperately want independence, and I'll support anybody who can deliver independence. And even the ones that I find it stomach to accept what they're doing, if they come up with a referendum, I'll still fight for that referendum. And the ones that I find upsetting are the people saying, oh, if by some miracle the SNP deliver a referendum 2023, I'm not going to vote for it because it's SNP it's delivering it. Well, that's nuts. That's like being offered you buy the best house in the world, but you're going to knock it back because you don't like the old wallpaper, the old curtains or some rubbish. So we need to all get in the same side, but we need the leadership for the parties to deliver the opportunity to get independence, and that ain't it's not visible anywhere at the moment apart from God structured party line, which soon disappears, and is the help member on a day-to-day basis. Like,
it's a very good point you made about the SNP becoming what the Labour Party used to be, and it's not just at elected level. I've noticed, and it's been happening over a number of years, that particularly the younger members of the SNP they've grown up only ever knowing the SNP as a party of government. They don't know what it's like to be in opposition. I can remember years ago being at an election count in North Ayrshire when the Labour Party were still dominant. And I actually heard the Labour activist saying to his pal, Jesus, what do we have to do to lose?
Yeah.
They were so arrogant. Right? That it turned out what they had to do to lose was stand shoulder to shoulder with the Tories in an independence referendum. But those young people in the SNP have grown up thinking they're entitled to win. The SNP are entitled to win. That's not the case. They've got to earn the trust of the people. And some of the policies the SNP is coming away with just now, I don't think the general public actually know that much about them. Because if they did, then you would see support drain from the SNP, and I don't want that to happen, because I totally agree with you, John. But the only way we're going to achieve independence is all of us working together to bring it about. So we have to work with the SNP,
It's essential that people understand it, and just picking up something that both of you have touched on, because one of you had mentioned Thatcher, and Campbell, you had mentioned that you grew up with Nicola Sturgeon, and she was the reason, or Thatcher was the reason she got into politics, allegedly. Now, she was compared to Thatcher on the front page of a newspaper today. And I can't see any difference, to be perfectly honest. So we'll touch on the policies that you're talking about that people don't know about, because one of those things was a sex survey, and this was something that I led with because I find it really sickening. We've done a wee bit of work of late, Campbell, just talking to people about the GRA and its impact. We've done an event last week for St Andrew's Day where we had a lot of guests coming on and talking about their experience of GRA and the concerns that it's bringing. Only for, as you were talking about, Mr Wishart, and there was another blogger, podcaster, whatever you want to call it, independent supporter, had offered to debate Mr Wishart, but he'd refused, saying that he was calling him names like comfy and something else, which made him right wing. So I mean, the language that's getting used versus the information that's getting shared seems to be to try and, I don't know, divide the country. We've had a potential conspiracy on Mr Alex Salmond, the former First Minister. The evidence that put Craig Murray, another pro-independence blogger, journalist, reporter, in jail, if it was known to the public, is just the truth. And the issues that we find ourselves in Scotland is that the dream that we were told would never die seems to be getting strangled by the party that's supposed to carry us to the destiny rather than to strangle the dream. What's your thoughts on it, Campbell?
There's a section in the book, Peter. It's I referred back to when we first started at the Scottish Parliament in 1999. The first days, I can remember having a conversation with 2 or 3 SNP MSPs who were of the same position as me, left-wing Republican, and I said to them that the SNP had the whole of the second floor of the offices and the old offices up the top of the Royal Mile. And I said that there has to be at least 2 people on this floor working for the British state, working for either MI5 or Special Branch. And the MSPs agree with me. One of them says probably more than 2. And I firmly believed that at the time, and it's still the case. When you think about it, MI5 and Special Branch are there to protect the British state. They would not be doing their job if they didn't have people in the SNP. And I think one of the major problems we have got as an independence movement is that those people who were quite lowly in the SNP at that time have moved up the ranks. And some of them are now in positions of great influence within the SNP. And people don't like me saying that, because what I'm saying is that there are people in the higher echelons of the SNP who are at the very least passing information to the British state, to the forces of the British state. But you've also got people who are in the SNP at those positions who are formulating policy. And that policy could be to stall independence. We've got to look at that as an option.
It's interesting to say that, because I was actually going to say that to you earlier on. I've an opinion too, and I've always been suspicion that the SNP have been infiltrated. And it was always a question in my mind. We're talking about GRA and stuff like that. And GRAs are a subject I'm sick to bloody death, I'll be honest with you. But you don't hear GRA being a problem for Labour or Tories or Liberals. So in all of my mind, why is it such a big issue? Why has it got such a stranglehold on Scottish politics? And why is some of these people pushing it so hard to the detriment of women's rights? And I just couldn't get around it. I thought people have been people have been got a hold of, and as you say, I think they've been infiltrated, and they're using that to stop the march towards independence. And they can stall it. I don't think they can stop it totally, but they can stall it and damage it, and might stop us getting it within our lifetimes. That's a definite possibility.
Right, John, here we go. Who?
Remember, this is public.
Be careful.
You don't want any.
John, be careful here. Remember what I said at the start about being able to prove everything you say.
Yes.
Be very careful.
I'm not mentioning any names. That's specific, as I said. There's people being got to. Has been look. Why would independence agenda be? When's the last time people mentioned independence? They're on this about every other day. It's about what they want is where's independence in the horizon. We've been promised it next year or the year after, but she can easily be outmanoeuvred by the British government. They can call an election. You know what I mean? And that's her kicked in the road for another 2 years after that. So,
it's I'm half joking. I've got the same sort of questionable thoughts as you, John, to an extent. You know, Campbell, John, and I occasionally have a wee chat offline, and it's just like 2 pals like in a pub, like kind of a thing, right? And we don't mind what we talk about, and we don't mind that we don't always agree. But what would they say is that, right? Well, how do we get ourselves closer to agreeing, so that we can make something of this to talk about it, and it's no right? So there's a couple of things that obviously, John, that you've said there. Now, I would go as far as to say I have the same thoughts, and I need to, for me, look at who is driving the issues that seem to be dividing the movement, the Yes movement. And for me, there's only one section that are doing it, and the damage that they're causing has been picked up by a lot of people, they seem to be blaming everybody for want to clarify the things that they're unsure of, and name calling and being severe with people, the way that the TRAs did when people were questioning the Gender Recognition Act initially, and we're making some headway in that. I think that the SNP have been taken over, they've been captured, and there's a new party on the scene. We're talking about trying to keep young people involved. Over the next few weeks, John, we're going to have Alba Youth on the podcast telling us what to expect from them in the short, mid and long term for Scotland. So there's other options there. I don't necessarily think that the other options are 100% viable right at this minute, but with a lot of hard work, and I can see a lot of hard work getting put in, what do you think the chances of some sort of reconciliation between the two parties that seem to be at war in Scotland, which is the two independence parties? And it's, for me, it's no the two of them that are at war. It seems to be one at war with the other one. But again, you get called bigots and right wing for thinking that. So you need to kind of say, well, they don't agree with one another. How do we get them closer to agreeing? What do we do? So Campbell, what's your ideas?
You're absolutely right. If you ask questions, you're attacked. Certainly on social media, you ask questions, you're attacked. It's going to be very difficult to bring the two sides together, not least because one political party tried to jail the leader of the other, and there's no escaping that. That's what happened. So it's going to be very, very difficult. But another thing that came to mind when you were talking there, Peter, was if you think back to the 2014 referendum, I can remember arguing with people, look, this isn't about the SNP, because people would say about the SNP's policy and this and the currency and the SNP's policy. It's nothing to do with the SNP. They're facilitating it. It's about the principle of independence. You either vote for independence or you vote to continue being governed by Tories from London. Because think about if we ever get to the stage of having another referendum, think about the ammunition the British Unionists will use against the independence movement because of SNP policies, like gender reform, like the hate crime bill. That's not going to come up. And they're going to say, if you vote for independence, that's what you're going to get. And the scare stories will be all over the newspapers, all over the British Unionist broadcasters. So the SNP are playing into the hands of the British Unionists. And I get back to this idea that there are people quite near the top, the SNP, who are developing these policies. I think in the full knowledge that it's going to, if no scupper independence, it's going to drive it down a side road that doesn't help us.
Can I ask you something as well, Campbell? Something that I remember for 2014 and even before 2014 was that I'm fascinated in how the media works, and I spent a lot of time in this watching different media, and I used to be fascinated by Fox News of all things that we don't get to see in British TV. Now it's how they formulate the news and how they deliver it and how they keep the narrative and keep it on what they want to deliver and what they want to talk about. Don't allow the objectives to change. But the most frustrating thing for me, even before 2014, the years run up to it, I was dragging my hands across a blackboard, metaphorically speaking, about how timid the SNP were at responding to attacks from the British media and the British establishment. They can lie and bloviate all over the place, and the SNP were so timid in the response and so measured in the response. It was cringeworthy, and it really made. I could have come up with a better answer to some of the questions, and some of these politicians are supposed to represent the Scottish people. I could have given a better answer than they could, and they're paid to do it and coached to do it, as far as I would know. But their answers and responses were timid. It's almost as if they didn't want to kick the sleeping dog like, because they're fear of the response, like. But when you're fighting for independence, so if you're not going to go that far, then you're not really in it. You're not really fighting for it, are you?
To a certain extent, John, that's right. The SNP want to court the media, but it's a British unionist media. They will only do what they want, you know.
Of course.
The SNP trying to court them isn't going to work, you know. I'm thinking back to when I was in MSP and some of the stories that the unionist media would run attacking the SNP. And you're right, the SNP had a whole media office in the Scottish Parliament that should have been phoning editors, you know, screaming down the phone at them, shouting abuse at them if need be. Like Alistair Campbell used to do for the Labour Party. Nobody was doing that. I mean, I can remember even right back at the very beginning again, back to 1999, the SNP had Dorothy Grace Elder, a multi-award winning journalist, had Margaret MacDonald, who'd worked in broadcasting, had Lloyd Quinnan, who'd worked in broadcasting as well. They were three of what Swinney referred to as, excuse me, the bastards, because they weren't on his side, so they were his enemy. Right? So they weren't even consulted about anything to do with the SNP's media output. But they had people there that could have been used, and they were excellent, and they just weren't used because the SNP is never going to persuade, you know, the majority of newspapers to support independence. They're never going to persuade the British Broadcasting Corporation to support independence. So we know they're up against it, but they could be doing a hell of a lot more to try and get the message across.
Yeah, definitely.
I totally agree with that. It's John and I have said it repeatedly that the media side from the SNP seems to be non-existent, and having good media to counteract bad propaganda is essential.
Absolutely.
And it's as if, I don't know, I hate saying things like this, it's as if they're playing at it, and you can see that they're playing at it, which is frustrating even more people, because some folk have got health concerns. Some folk have really pushed for independence between 2014 and now, because we were so close in 2014, and it's so attainable to a lot of people. And a lot of people are saying, right, we need to try and do this. And we've lost people along the way and we're potentially going to lose more as a result of the dithering. And for me, that's unforgivable for Nicola Sturgeon, that she's holding us to the kowtow of a bastardised Westminster government that's doing nothing but fucking up their own shit, and ours to go with it. And I'm sorry, but it angers me to the point that why can nobody see that? I mean, you see them, and it's common that they put out these messages about independence, and with independence this, with independence we won't have to this, with independence we can this, with just fucking do it, man, because we're all sitting here, we all know that it's best for Scotland, and we're not getting best represented, and that for me is unforgivable for the leader of the SNP. That's what I hold against her.
Do you know, Campbell, do you not think it's sad that we couldn't have a bigger pantomime villain than Boris Johnson? He even makes Thatcher look can have like human elements to her. We've got the biggest pantomime villain out there, but the thing is, the media wanted to focus on him bloviating and being the fool and idiot. That man's no idiot. He's a manipulative, dangerous, intelligent. Look what he's achieved for the Conservative Party. We're talking about these people are willing to, down south, they're willing to give away their human rights to achieve this Brexit objective. They'll give away anything if you're up in a Union Jack. They couldn't care less. They haven't the intellect to see when they want to take human rights away from refugees that are bobbing about the ocean, or want to block lifeboats going out to rescue people that are in the sea. They don't think it's going to come back and bite them in the arse. They're going to come, at some point they're going to become the hunted. So we've got the biggest pantomime villain out there, and really we should be making hay while the sun shines, because after Boris Johnson goes, they're going to get somebody, I'd imagine, that's going to be a bit more politically able to smooth the waters out for them up here a wee bit more. It might not be as polarised as what Boris Johnson is. So we really should be making hay while the sun shines. If we can't free Scotland for the biggest villain down there, the biggest liar, the biggest fraud. It's the man's, everyone knows what he is. It's only the immediate kid on, they don't know what he is. If we can't use him to help deliver independence, then God help us, because we're lost.
There's another aspect as well. I mean, it was when the Scottish Parliament was set up, it wasn't by accident that broadcasting was reserved to Westminster.
Right.
You know, that was very deliberate. Because if you look at Catalonia, there's radio stations pro-independence, radio stations, there's television stations that are pro-independence. We're not allowed to do that in Scotland. But we're in the 21st century now. We're on something that could be used by the SNP government to promote the message. You know, the internet's there, we can use it, or we should be using it. And we're all using it. Right? We're all using it to do our bit. But it's people like, you know, you and Peter and other blogs and vlogs that are getting attacked by the SNP. Or by certain elements within the SNP, when the SNP should be utilising these outlets to get the message across.
Well, I think we would all support the SNP with reservation. If they come out and say, we will give you a referendum and we'll put the information out there for everyone to make that choice, then there's nobody here that wouldn't drag themselves over broken glass to deliver it. It's just that, are they willing to give us it, and will they give us it? And that's where we are. We're in this no man's land of not going anywhere at the moment.
Right. Well, I'm going to stop us here a wee second, Campbell, because we've spoken awful lot about current events, but I want to get a wee bit more into you, if that's all right. Now, I mentioned earlier, you've done a couple of documentaries. I'm going to do a wee screen share, and we'll just play the opening for one, just so that people, I've shared them a couple of times just on my general Twitter feed. Had done before I even booked you, so it wasn't as if I'd done it after the fact. It's things that I found informative about Scotland, because when people, for me, when you watch yours especially, and then others that follow, it gave me an idea that Scotland was built in fraud. And like, I can see the potential that repeating itself. If we do go for independence, that we're going to have a potential corrupt administration that takes over initially. But I'm going to do a screen share. We'll talk about your documentary first a wee bit. So the documentary, just for anybody that doesn't know, it's the only game in town, and this is the opening part to it here.
I'm Campbell Martin. I'm a journalist, but back in 2004 I was a member of this place, the Scottish Parliament. It was a very different...
We'll just pause it there because people can tune in. I wanted to get in about... I've watched it a couple of times because there was things that I didn't pick up the first time, if I'm honest, after I watched the second one. And without ruining it for anybody that's not watching it, the questions that I want to ask is, what was it like for you, like digging all that information, finding all that information, being committed to making sure, as you say, that you could prove everything that you've talked about in that documentary? How difficult was it for you?
It wasn't easy, Peter. But once it's like, you know, the old saying, like you start pulling a bit of thread or a bit of string and it starts to unravel. That's what it was like, because I started asking questions of people and they would tell me something and I would think, oh, wait a minute, that's not right, because somebody else said something. So you'd start building a picture of what actually happened. And if anybody hasn't watched the films, and I hope they do watch them, it's about North Ayrshire Council decided to build 4 schools in North Ayrshire, and using the public-private partnership method to fund it, which was just a different name for the private finance initiative. But they only ever had one genuine bid, and the second bid was, I'll let people watch the films and they'll see just how ridiculous the second bid was. But I wouldn't have got involved if North Ayrshire Council hadn't decided to build one of the schools on football pitches and Saltcoats, because they would just have gone through. You know, nobody would have bothered if it had been on another site. But because they wanted to build on these public football pitches, that's how I get involved and started to look at it. And once you, as I said, you start to unravel the things, and we found out there was actually only one genuine bidder, and the amounts of money that was involved in it, and again, I'm giving away the whole film kind of thing here, but ultimately, I presented that information. We still sort of thought North Ayrshire Council didn't know what was happening, so I gave all that information to North Ayrshire Council, and they ignored it. So I went to the Procurator Fiscal in Kilmarnock and gave him the information, and he instructed the police to carry out an investigation which lasted 2 weeks. And they came back and said they could find no evidence of criminality. And watch the film, see if you can spot the criminality. But the most telling thing was at the second meeting I had with the Procurator Fiscal, and I put it in the film. I presented a box file with completely new evidence that he hadn't seen before. And he pushed it back across the table to me and said, it's more than my job's worth to reopen this case.
Wow.
So,
I mean,
that was the Fiscal, you know.
And it's, for me, like, at the time when I watched it, I'm going to be honest with you, at the time when I watched it, I seen that one, obviously, the second one I don't think was out yet at that point when I seen this first one, right? And it made me really angry, right? Because I've always been an independent thinker. I've always wanted Scotland to do well. And I could see the fact that from that point of view, just how the unionist parties were doing whatever they could to ensure that we couldn't. And that's how I viewed it, and it made me really angry. So when the second one came out, and I watched the second one, and you'd say a couple of things in the second one, mate, I was triggered. I'm like, you did it, because it's like, for me, it's like the big bullies. It's like, well, no. Well, we know what's right. We know what's best for our communities and about us, and we know that, well, we should have a say in this. And it's others telling you no, and just you've like, the work that you've done was fantastic. I have to say that. I mean, I think it's great work, and I've promoted it on a few occasions, like on social media, and just chatting about it, Campbell, because I think it's essential that people watch it to understand. You want to know what how Scotland, when the Parliament came about, and the things that have happened since then. That's the true Scotland, and it angers you, and it makes you kind of go, well, it's not the Scotland. We could be so much more if we're doing it your way. If we're doing it the way that people like Scottish people and people that care about their areas and care about the betterment of Scotland. So I have to commend you for all that you've done there.
Thanks very much.
You've opened certainly my eyes, and I've spoke to others that have said the same, Campbell. It's a case of, right, well, we need to find this out. Look at this, guys, here. So your book, as I said at the start, I'm really looking forward to getting on about it, because there's things that I think I know, and there's things that I think with the information within the book that will confirm that. So I can't thank you enough for what you do, and it's people like yourself that I think should get more recognition in Scotland, because, well, people like Campbell and others, and I don't include ourselves in this, John, they're trying to do like the things that we know are right for Scotland, and they're right for us, and they're right for our areas, and they're right for the betterment of our people, and we're proud of these things. So stop shutting us down and taking them away from us when we can have a say, well, this, for our society, for us to succeed and be better, be what we can be, let us do these things rather than the things that you're shutting down. So I would hold Campbell up to anybody and say, here, aye, listen to this man, listen to men like this, listen to people like this. And it's not just men, there are good women out there that do the same. But aye, Campbell, thank you for what you do for Scotland.
Well,
And thank
there's
you.
one thing I would say, Peter, and it gets me really angry, is that having made those films and put all that information out there for people to see, and I know people are angry when they watch the films, when they see what actually happened, but nothing will happen because of that. Because the the police and the procurator fiscal will not do anything. And that's why I made that sort of wee report, I think you referred to, which kind of updates what the second bidders did after the North Ayrshire thing, because it brings in some very senior people in the Labour government at that time. And in the first film, I posed the questions, you know, who has the power to stop a police investigation? Who has the power to instruct the fiscal not to carry out prosecutions? But I left it. But if you watch the second film and then you watch the wee updated report, you see who had the power to do that.
Yep. And that for me, see when you sent us that the 9-minute clip, that was yesterday you sent that, I think.
Yes.
Yesterday. It kind of it shut off a couple of things for me for the first two as well. So I'm like, oh, right. And then I looked at the names and I won't mention them because, as I say, with your permission, I would like to run just that 9 minutes at the end of this podcast.
No
with full credit to yourself, obviously. But just so that people can, if they've not seen the second one yet, it might draw them back to it because, for me, it was fascinating and being interested in Scotland. It's a part of Scottish history, and it's like if you really want to know what's happening in Scotland and like the current history, have a wee look at that. Have a look at the documentaries.
See that's right, and you sort of touched on it as well earlier, Peter, about the possibility that an independent Scotland could go down the same road, because at the moment the PFI PPP thing illustrates what do you do when those who have the power just tell you where to go. They don't use the power for the good of the people. I mean, at the moment in North Ayrshire, it's costing taxpayers £1 million a month, and it will do until 2036. And the people we look to take action are just saying, don't bother, you'll go away eventually, you'll shut up eventually, just forget it, turn their back on them. It's not acceptable.
I think we're noticing that even, and I'm going to refer back to, because we like to do a bit of Tory bashing, because although there's shit going on in Scotland that we feel we need to address, because like, who else is doing it? The Tories are like killing folks, just no bothering about it, letting the bodies pile high in their thousands, having parties at Christmas when everybody's locked down. And the police said, and I found this really funny, that they cannot retrospectively deal with a crime that's been committed. Now, John, I've seen a poster for you, and I will include it in the edit about a Minority Report type thing. And somebody posted again, and this is why I love the Scottish humour and Scottish Twitter in particular, because the humour is off the scale. Because somebody posted, got a speeding ticket through for an event in 2055 that's no happened yet, right? So we're taking the piss out of it already. It's, for me, it just shows that what you're saying about the Scottish side of things, it's heavily influenced by, because all I can see is corruption. I mean, let's call a spade here, right? It's corruption in many levels, moral, financial, and whatever else you want to say. By telling people not to do something and then having a fucking private party indoors when there's folk dying and can't get to even see their loved ones who for their last breath and what have you. I think it is, for me, it's a step too far, even for the Tories. We thought them trying to nobble the Parliament was a step to it, but come on, what's next? What is next? What do we do next? Do we wake up and it's Animal Farm and we're in a police state? Campbell, what's your thoughts on that?
But if you play by Westminster's rules, these things will continue to happen. It's an independent Scotland needs to be different. It needs to be a nation where we can trust the people we elect, where we can trust the people that are in positions of power over us. Because at the moment, we can't trust them. And it goes back to the core of this whole thing. You know, Scotland hasn't voted Tory since 1955. Yet for the majority of the period between then and now, we've had Tory governments imposed on us. That's the reality of Scotland being in the British Union. You know, and if we can't get that message across to the public, there's something far wrong. But again, we're dealing with British-controlled media. We're dealing with the British-controlled Scottish Parliament, because the Scottish Parliament is only devolved. It's answerable to the Westminster Parliament, which is the English Parliament. Again, I wrote an article about this some time ago now. We've got to, I think, try to explain clearly to people that the so-called UK Parliament is the English Parliament. You know, in 1707, the English Parliament carried on as normal. The Scottish Parliament stopped sitting. The English Parliament carried on as normal. That thing at Westminster is the English Parliament. And the reason we don't have an English Tory party, an English Labour party, an English Lib Dem party, is because they are the English parties. You know, the so-called Scottish parties are only subsections of the English parties. You know, and this is something we need to get across to folk. We're dealing with the English Parliament when we talk about Westminster. And they're not going to ever do their best for Scotland unless it benefits them too.
Well, I mean, I think history's proven that. John, you were going to say something there, mate, before I'd ask Campbell.
It shows you how bad things are down south. Tories have just won a by-election down there. And all right, there was just majority, but Keith Starmer and the Labour Party down there, they get their, I think that was, they say they cut the Tory majority, but that was their lowest actual number of votes. And that somebody pointed out in years and years. So there isn't the appetite down south to get rid of Johnson. They're all in with Johnson, and you've got people up with banners across motorways saying keep England white, you know, that sort of thing, keep the again, and that doesn't get hounded out in the media. And as I say, they're trying to stop lifeboats going out to rescue people that are drowning at sea. So the mentality is very, very right wing down there, driven by the media down there, who've got a right wing bias and they're xenophobic. Let's be honest. And you've got GB News and since GB News has come on the scene, you've got BBC and Sky. They've got to be seen to be, well, they've recruited half the bloody staff for them. So they've just get more and more right wing. So the narrative has been manipulated down there, and the English electorate are happy to go with it. They're ever happy to go further and further right wing. And hell mend you if you're one of the victims, because you're screwed.
Just to follow on from what you said there, John, if you look at the recent political history, the only time the Labour Party has won is when they transformed into New Labour and became a clone of the Tory Party. And that's the only time that the people in England were willing to vote for the Labour Party, when they looked like the Tories.
Yeah.
And I think, good plug for my book here. In the book, I explain that John Swinney, when he was leader of the SNP, actually told me, my face, that that's what he wanted to do with the SNP. This is before he knew what I actually believed. He wanted to create new SNP because he admired what Tony Blair had done to the Labour Party. He admired it. So that's what we're up against with the current SNP. You know? This idea that new SNP the type of SNP or the type of independent Scotland that John Swinney would want would be an independent Scotland that embraced the free market economy, you know, the Thatcherite free market economy. And that's not what we need for an independent Scotland. You know, might work well in John's constituency, the next Tory seat or not.
But look what happens when you hand over things to private. And look what's happened to these. I mean, I can remember, Christ, I know I'm awfully young actually to remember this, but remember they sold off the British Gas and all these electric companies and selling off BT and all that, and we're told that there's going to be so much market competition, it'll keep prices down and everything else. Well, look what's happening in the energy market. They've all failed by massive amounts. We're getting down to 5 or 6 monopolised companies now who will be able to charge what the hell they want. Your gas bill is going to double again before next year, and it's us poor plebs that are struggling to buy our gas and electricity every week. So that it's been consolidated for profit, and that's what the free market economy was all about, selling it over to private industry to make more profit, and they'll do that with the Scottish NHS as well. I really think people in Scotland are naive if they don't think Westminster's not going to overreach the Scottish Parliament and do exactly to the NHS in Scotland what they do to the NHS in England. They're not going to let us up here and have with me Scottish utopia of the NHS looking after folk. They're going to introduce a two-tier system that they're going to have in England where the insurance caters in NHS to the private, and you've got a skid row NHS for the rest of us. And that's what they're going to impose that and bypass the Scottish Parliament. So some people have seen on Twitter and that have got a naive attitude that we're going to get away with doing what we're doing with the NHS. They're going to bypass the Scottish Parliament and sell off everything they bloody can. It isn't nailed to the flare. That's what's going to happen.
Unless we stop them. You're absolutely
exactly, yeah. And there's only one way to stop them.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Right, so can I make a wee link here, guys? Just with the one way to stop before we try and find out the one way to stop them, right? I think we all know what it is. But you were talking about there, John, you were saying about how it's right wing. And this is what I think, and I hate saying this, I think SNP are jumping on the Tory bandwagon with the right wing stuff by accusing the rest of the pro-independence people in Scotland of being right wing, because they know that people are looking down there and seeing how right wing it is and the things. So that as John and I have said, and as others have said, people believe just what's said at times. Well, and people, there are liars out there that will just lie just to say something, and some folk will believe that. So it's standing up to saying that, well, hold on, what's right wing about trying to look after women and children's rights as we move into an independent Scotland? I don't see anything right wing about that. So why then why are the SNP doing what they're doing? That's the question that I think a lot of people want answered. Right. So Campbell, I'm going to ask you first.
I think it goes back to this, and I know people don't like to talk about it, but there are people in the SNP who are not working for an independent Scotland. They're working to the agenda set by Westminster, by MI5, by special branch, and people can call that conspiracy theories if they like. But you look how MI5 and special branch infiltrated the IRA, they infiltrated the NUM, they had people right at the very top of these organisations. And I now think that that's where the SNP are at in their development. There are people who are formulating policies in the SNP that are designed to split the independence movement, that are designed to sidetrack independence, not necessarily kill it off. That would be a wee bit obvious, you know, if the SNP suddenly became a unionist party. But they're a devolutionist party and to a large extent. So that doesn't help us in taking this forward to independence. You know, when you think back to the problem I've got with the SNP and where they go from here is that when they had a disastrous leader in John Swinney, he had to go. And Alex Salmond, I said in a TV interview, Swinney has to resign and Alex Salmond has to come back and lead the party, because I thought at that time, and I think I've been proved right, he was the only person who could unite the party, the fundamentalists and the gradualists, and turn around its fortunes and take us forward. And he did, you know, took us into government, took us to the independence referendum. But there's no Alex Salmond there for the SNP this time. So even if Nicola Sturgeon left office, there's nobody going to step in and reunite the party, reunite the movement and take us forward. And that's the big problem I see.
It's I mean, it's a great summation. I can't add into that would go, aye, well, this would change that. John, what's your thoughts there, mate?
Just exactly what that man just said there. I could not put it any better. Honestly, I could not put it any better. It's what the man said, and I just wish people had the common sense to listen to the man. That's a fact. I couldn't put it any better.
Aye, I'm sitting here going like that, just nodding along. Like, I see, and this is the thing. John and I, we don't proclaim to know everything. But we'll listen to people that have got experience. Sorry, I didn't mean it to come across that, Campbell. But like, we'll listen to people that have got experiences that we're unaware of, and we'll take on board, and then we'll do what you've done already. You've done your checks and things. Like, we'll go and have a wee look and do a wee bit of research and how accurate or inaccurate things are, and try and do the best that we can. Now, I've changed the background here just to Craig Murray, because as a fellow journalist, because let's be honest, the man's a journalist, a former diplomat.
He is a journalist, aye.
So what was your take on Craig Murray being jailed? Thankfully, he's now been released and back with his family, and hopefully there's whispers of him taking it to the European Court of Human Rights, which I wish him every success in. But what's your thoughts on it, Campbell?
I really hope he does go to the European courts. It beggars belief that someone could be jailed for jigsaw identification. One part of the jigsaw. How can you identify? From a jigsaw is a number of parts. So it would have taken somebody else to put another piece in place to identify these people. I read Craig's stuff. I never knew any of the alphabet women from anything that he wrote. I wouldn't have known. So it's a subjective decision on the part of the judge to decide that she thought they could be identified from what Craig wrote, and then she jailed them. This really isn't a good look for Scotland. It's not the type of Scotland that we want to portray to the world, where we jail journalists for reporting accurately on a trial. And let's not forget, a trial where the accused is found not guilty of all charges. And yet some of the people who gave evidence against them are protected. You know, it really beggars belief.
Yeah, I mean, if this was happening in another country and we were getting reports that, we'd be going, it's a banana republic.
Exactly.
The courts are nobbled. The justice system's nobbled. The politicians are nobbled. What are we doing this for? What are we sitting in our asses for and just taking this? Because I don't know, I like to think maybe 20, 30 years ago that my parents and other parents like mine's would have been on the streets. And I'm not advocating for protest or anything else. I just see the difference in society where we tolerate a lot more that has a worse effect on us than what our forebears did. And I think that's time that we changed. But they're putting in place anti-protest bills where you can get 51 weeks in jail for disagreeing with the government. And in Scotland, and we're talking about the Scottish Parliament, the restrictions that they put there, I mean, that's sickened me, John. I've told you this personally, mate. Like, the fact that they've done that, and then with Nicola Sturgeon taking the saltires down for Butte House at the COP, but I can no longer support Nicola Sturgeon in anything.
Can I just say something, Peter? Just come back to me when you were talking about this move to ban protests at the Scottish Parliament. When they first mooted that, I posted a photo of me when I was an MSP speaking to a gathering outside the Scottish Parliament, and I noted that the Scottish Parliament body that had asked Westminster to impose these restrictions on protests was the Scottish Parliament corporate body. And when I made that speech outside the Scottish Parliament to a protest group, I was a member of the Scottish Parliament corporate body. So that shows you how things have changed under this SNP government.
Yeah, it's completely when the opposite of certainly how I thought it was going to act. Like, I don't know, in 2014, like, on the 19th of September, I was gutted like everybody else that vote. The rest of the 45% that voted yes, or whoever voted yes, right? We'll say the 45, right? But I was as gutted as anybody, and it took me a couple of weeks to kind of get over that. Like, I'm sure a lot of people, it took a lot of people a wee bit of time to go over it, and then we started looking at the positive side. What did we learn for that? How can we take it forward? And the Yes movement don't get enough credit as far as I'm concerned, right? They don't get enough credit because they started marching, they started podcasts, they started doing blogs, they started being their own media and trying to tell people, like, well, listen to us. look at this, we'll point out the errors here, and we'll tell you why they're doing this, so that they can keep a hold over these. And we learned for that, right? In the Yes movement, we grew, we grew massively, and we started and now it's like there's the statement that was out a couple of weeks ago for this cabal that's taking over SNP about there's a certain type of Yes supporter. Away and kiss my arse, right? Every one of these away and kiss my arse, right? We were pounding the streets and thinking up things before you were even out of college and university, right? And that's no like, oh, the young versus the old. It's have a wee bit of respect for what's went before. You're trying to demolish something. And it angers me, it really angers me. Sorry, John, when you go, is there something you want to ask Campbell, because I'm on one here?
No, you caught me in the hot there, Peter. I'm doodling as you're listening to you there.
Campbell, sorry.
There's something again that came to my mind when you were talking there, Peter, about protests and the things we used to do. And I've noticed that you don't see SNP posters and banners at marches anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it used to be that SNP were everywhere. You know, whatever the march was for, the SNP were everywhere. And you saw the SNP banners and posters. You don't see that now. You know? And okay, they're in government in Scotland. They're certainly not in government in the UK. You know, and a lot of the things we're protesting about is the treatment of refugees and things like that. The SNP are sitting at the back, being this sensible government. You know, that's fine. Okay, show you can be a sensible government, right? But you also need to be the radical movement that's going to deliver independence. You know, again, going back to my book and talk about what Swinney did, not just to the party, but to individual members of the party. And you know, I can remember the one time that the SNP chief whip at that time actually had a word with me. He tried to tell him to stop criticising Swinney. I said, no. I said, if you think that John Swinney is the man that's going to inspire Scotland to get up off its knees and retake its independence, you're only fooling yourself. Right? And that's, to me, that was the beginning of the end. And then Alec turned it around, you know, and then it's gone back to that again, where we're no longer this radical independence movement. You know, when you look at all the countries in the world that have taken their independence, they didn't ask for a Section 30 from the people who don't want you to have it. You know, this is madness. And you're talking about, you know, where do we go? How do we deliver independence? As far as I'm concerned, it goes back to what used to be the SNP policy of a majority of seats or a majority of votes as a mandate for independence, not just a referendum on independence.
Yes, for independence.
And if the SNP and other pro-independence parties stand for election on a manifesto that commits them to delivering independence, no referendum, then that's what they must do when elected. You know, that's the way forward as far as I'm concerned.
Just picking up a point you said there, Campbell, as well about the SNP. I follow a lot of them on Twitter and have for a long time, and it's not because of any admiration for many of them, but it's very visible for watching the tweets. Well, most of them don't tweet very much, but you can put in the palm of one hand how many times they mention independence. The only person that mentions independence is Angus, what's his name? Way up in the
Angus Brendan.
Yeah, and he's always saying there's no plan B, there's no plan B, there's no plan B. So he's can grudgingly saying we're doing nothing. But the rest of them all been doing there. They were all tweeting like mad before they became, and is for the first year or so been MPs and that. But their Twitter accounts now are as silent as SNP. There's another media one to check out for a laugh. SNP Media it was called, and I followed them about, and they were all, gave the impression that they were going to be media for the SNP. That was a Twitter account. Well, I think they've got a £5 voucher on a page go mobile phone because the chuckers no used it in fucking donkeys like Ken. So it's as if they've taken a vow of silence on independence, a collective vow of silence, and saying anything progressive on independence. There's not one of these MPs down there at Westminster saying anything progressive and independence. If they're toeing the party line, shut up, let's just play the Westminster game, sit down there and you're doing all right. That's what you're doing your job then. And that isn't helping us push for independence.
The Westminster MPs, Ian Blackford said, how many times did he stand up in the House of Commons and say, Scotland will not be dragged out of the EU against our will? No. Now that Scotland's been dragged out of the EU against their will,
I know.
What's happening?
I know. Diet. Well, it's been a lot of talk about. He says a lot of good things to that, but they laugh at him. See, when you watch Prime Minister's Question Time, they're rolling about laughing at him, and that's how much contempt they've got for not just him but for Scotland. So for him, and sometimes he's made good points now and again, and he's trying to get a couple of blows in at Boris Johnson. But some of the questions he comes away with, you just think, what was the point in asking that? But this motion of censure on Boris Johnson, what was the point of that? What was it going to achieve? Nothing. It was just political grandstanding. It just gives an opportunity to unite and belittle Scotland. And we're still in there. What was the point of that? It achieved nothing. It just played into their hands. They can all go together, make you look like an idiot and cost Scotland in because of it. So you achieve nothing. And it just gets berated all the time.
John, right? I'm going to butt in there because we've chatted away. Sorry, we've both ranted at you the night, Campbell. Sorry about that. But I wanted to. This is a non-laughing matter, a very serious matter. I don't know if you've seen in the news over the past few days the reports say the young boy Arthur Labinho Hughes, who was tragically tortured. There's no other way to say it. Tragically tortured by the people that should have been looking after him. That's the picture. That's the young lad, 6 years of age. There was a video that I don't want to share because for me it was too distressing. It was too harrowing. I don't know if any of you seen it, but it broke me a wee bit. And I just wanted to say that make sure. Make sure you're looking out for the Waynes is the best message that I can say, because they are really vulnerable and they can't do it themselves. So it's up to us. I don't want to finish on a really sad note, but I wanted to kind of pay attention to that, folks, because it was really stark for me.
Absolutely.
Campbell, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Listen, I would love to have you on again in the future.
No
once
problem.
I've read your book, as I say, I'm getting your book.
I read the book.
After I've read that, and hopefully I can then pick your brains a wee bit further, if that's okay, because it gives other people a chance to read the book as well. But for this evening, for your thoughts on Scotland, on independence, for the work personally that I've seen you doing, thank you.
Thank you.
Because it's people like you that will help people like us to make Scotland the Scotland it can be. Keep doing what you're doing, Campbell.
I'll do my best. Thanks very much. Cheers.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.
In 2009, a complaint was lodged with the Metropolitan Police in London. The matter related to what appeared to be a fraudulent deal involving an American company, CombinedMed, and the Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust. CombinedMed is a commercial offshoot of the University of Pittsburgh Medical Centre. During an investigation I had been working on, I discovered that CombinedMed paid £12,000 a month to a Scottish company called Americium, which was based in Fife. This retainer was paid by CombinedMed in relation to Americium advising on how the American company could access NHS contracts. The NHS privatisation agenda was being carried out under the Labour government led by then Prime Minister Gordon Brown. My investigation followed on from the North Ayrshire Schools PPP project, Scotland's biggest PFI PPP scandal, where the same Fife company, Americium, had played a significant role. Anyone who has seen the two documentaries, The Only Game in Town and The Only Game in Town 2, The Cover-Up, will know North Ayrshire Council only ever had one credible and viable bid for its multi-million-pound project to build 4 schools. A second bid, which allowed the council to claim it had genuine competition for its contract, came from a company called Comprehensive Estate Services, CES. This company was, at the time, newly formed, had no office, no accounts, and no experience in building or maintaining schools. The paperwork submitted as bid documents by Comprehensive Estate Services actually related to a Singapore firm. In the documents, CES claimed to be a subsidiary of the Singapore company, but that was a lie. As The Only Game in Town films also reveal, North Ayrshire Council's own external advisors on the procurement of its public-private partnership project to build 4 schools recorded at the first key stage review of the process that the bid from Comprehensive Estate Services was materially non-compliant and that it failed the review. Despite this, North Ayrshire Council allowed the bid to remain to give the pretence that it had genuine competition, which was a requirement of EU procurement rules under which the bid was run. The contract, eventually awarded by North Ayrshire Council to First Class Consortia, the only genuine bidder, is now costing local taxpayers over £1 million a month. A police investigation into what happened during the procurement process for the North Ayrshire PPP contract lasted just 2 weeks. A report was then sent to the Crown Office Procurator Fiscal Service with the conclusion that the police could find no evidence of criminality. The Crown Office agreed and the matter was dropped. Incidentally, if you haven't yet watched the Only Game in Town films, both are available on YouTube. The link between the North Ayrshire PFI PPP scandal and the complaint lodged with the Metropolitan Police in 2009 was Americium. The parent company of Comprehensive Estate Services was Americium. The 2 directors of Comprehensive Estate Services, Richard Navrot and George Henderson, were also the 2 directors of Americium. The 2 companies both listed their address as being in the Fife village of Strathmiglo, but that address turned out to be the office of a chartered accountant who allowed Navrot and Henderson to use his premises as a postal address for their companies. My investigation in 2009 led me across the Atlantic to Pittsburgh in Pennsylvania and to Combine Med. I spoke with 2 men, former senior executives with the company. They told me in detail how Americium was able to rig an NHS procurement so that Combine Med would win the lucrative contract. Both men had been involved in the deal from the Combine Med side, but stressed that the American company had simply gone along with Americium's plan. The men stated that Combine Med always planned to deliver on their side of the deal. In fact, while Americium was being paid £12,000 a month by Combine Med, the Fife-based company was also employed by Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust to advise on opportunities to bring in the private sector to NHS provision. One role the Trust wanted to privatise was its procurement process. The 2 former Combine Med executives explained that they were approached by Richard Navrot of Americium, who put to them a plan he had concocted. His suggestion was that Combine Med should actually write the tender specifications for the privatisation of the Healthcare Trust procurement process. Navrot's idea was that the American company should write the tender specifications in such a way that only Combine Med could meet them. Americium would then present the tender specifications to Imperial College Healthcare Trust as if they had been produced by the Scottish company. They would then sit back and wait for the bid from Combine Med, which would perfectly meet the spec. Navrot's business partner, George Henderson, sat on the NHS Trust Committee that would award the contract. As previously stated, the former Combine Med executive stressed the American company always intended to deliver a state-of-the-art procurement system as its part of the deal. However, the 2 men also knew that if they went through with the rigged plan put in place by Americium, they would be breaking US and UK laws. So, before the contract was awarded, the 2 executives wrote a memo to their bosses stating they and the company were laying themselves open to prosecution. On receipt of the memo, the Combine Med bosses fired the 2 men. When I spoke with one of the former Combine Med executives, he told me how in the very early stages of the process with Americium, he arrived in London and was picked up from Heathrow Airport by Richard Navrot. I was told the Scotsman took the American directly to the Palace of Westminster, where they had lunch with Lord Lewis Mooney. According to the American executive, during a long lunch, both Navrot and Mooney spoke of their friendship with Prime Minister Gordon Brown, all 3 of the Scotsmen being from Fife. In fact, Lewis Mooney and Gordon Brown had been long-time associates in the Labour Party. Mooney had been the Labour MP for Kirkcaldy until boundary changes meant an adjacent seat would disappear. The seat that was due to be scrapped was represented by Gordon Brown. Mooney decided to stand down at the 2005 election allowing Brown to take over the Kirkcaldy seat. Mooney was subsequently elevated to the House of Lords. In his House of Lords declaration of interest at the time, Lord Mooney declared he was paid between £30,000 and £40,000 a year as an advisor to Amersham. Following the complaint to the Metropolitan Police, the two directors of Amersham, Richard Navrot and George Henderson, along with the then procurement manager of Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, were arrested. All three were bailed pending further investigation. Eventually though, despite the two former Combined Med executives making clear to the Metropolitan Police that they were prepared to give evidence, the investigation was dropped, and Navrot, Henderson and the Trust procurement manager were released without charge. Apparently, like with the North Ayrshire PPP deal, the police could find no evidence of criminality. At the end of the police involvement in the matter, Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust dropped its link with Amersham, and the proposed deal with Combined Med was terminated. In both cases, North Ayrshire Council and Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust, Richard Navrot and George Henderson walked away without a stain on their character. The men are either very lucky, or they have, or had, friends in very high places.